major breakthrough on hostage negotiations. Israel's war cabinet is meeting right now on a deal with Hamas to free about 50 of the 237 people being held captive. It's been 45 days since hostages, mostly innocent civilians, were taken by Hamas on the Jewish Sabbath, taken during an attack on Israel when terrorists raped women and murdered families. More than 1,000 people that day. For each spared that fate and instead taken hostage, the unknown and the wait is excruciating for their families. Now, we are told an announcement of a deal that will allow some of those hostages to come home could be imminent. President Biden addressed that moments ago.
We're now very close, very close. We could bring some of these hostages home very soon. But I don't want to get into the details of things because nothing is done until it's done. And we have more to say, we will, but things are looking good.
CNN is covering the story from all angles. Oren Lieberman is in Tel Aviv. MJ Lee is here in Washington at the White House. MJ, I want to start with you. That was a pretty remarkable moment from the President of the United States to lean that far into where he thinks that this negotiation is right now.
Yeah, that's right. You heard the president saying that we are very close to a deal, and that very much echoes what sources have been telling CNN all morning, that the U.S., Israel, and Hamas are on the cusp of announcing this deal, and it could come as early as today. I was in the room when the president made those remarks, and I did try to ask him at the end how many Americans he believes may be among the 50 hostages initially released, and he said, I'll have plenty of time to talk about the hostages, but not now, basically declining to go into any of the details. And I'll let Oren speak to the details of sort of the contours of this potential deal. But at least for the Biden administration, this, of course, Dana, has been an urgent priority, trying to get these hostages out, because they have said all along that they believe there are at least a handful of American citizens in the mix in Gaza being held by Hamas. And now what U.S. officials are saying is that they are hopeful that 3-year-old American citizen Abigail Edan will be among the 50 hostages that are initially released. She is the youngest known American hostage. Her parents were killed by Hamas. So this is a very tenuous situation, but hopefully U.S. officials are saying this 3-year-old American toddler will be in the mix of the 50 hostages. We've, of course, Anna, seen U.S. officials working around the clock to try to secure this deal over the last few weeks. The president, of course, has been on the phone with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Emir of Qatar, President of Egypt, and other top U.S. officials have been traveling in the region as well. But Dana, it's important to underscore, if this deal were to come to fruition, this is not only significant because of the release of hostages, but because this would mark the first sustained pause in fighting and the first major de-escalatory step that Israel will be taking really since the war first began.
MJ, thank you so much for that reporting. And let's get more specific about what sources are telling us this deal may include. The release of 50 women and children. And in exchange, there would be a 4 or 5 day pause in fighting, as MJ just alluded to. Now, 3 Palestinian prisoners would be swapped for each civilian Israeli hostage or other hostage being released by Hamas. Israel would stop flying surveillance drones over Gaza for at least 6 hours each day. Oren, I'm going to go to you now about what is happening in Israel as we speak. The government is meeting. What are you hearing about how that meeting is going and whether or not they will approve this deal?
So this is all part of a legal and political process that is required to approve such a deal, and that is required for a critical part of this, and that is to approve the release of Palestinian prisoners, women and children. So the first part of that is the war cabinet is meeting, and that's a very small group of people, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That will lead straight into a meeting of the security cabinet. Again, that's a slightly larger group. And then the full cabinet itself, that is the government. And it needs to be approved at each one of those stages for this deal to go through. Now, that's critical because 2 partners in Netanyahu's governing coalition, 2 far-right partners, I should say, have already put out statements saying they will oppose this deal. And that could, of course, scuttle it. And if they wanted to go to the extreme, they could theoretically topple Netanyahu's government. But having spoken to one of the families of the hostages a short time ago, They say they received an assurance from one of the other critical members of Netanyahu's government that if this deal is put forward, it will get approved. And that gives them a critical bit of confidence that having gotten to this point where we see the process in Israel begin to approve a hostage deal and an exchange and an agreement with Hamas that would see them free Israeli and other hostages potentially, that it will get over the line, and that's what they're looking to now. And that's important because these families have heard the word imminent before and have heard reports and rumors that something is about to happen. But if you speak with them, they believe there's something far more tangible here, something far more palpable and real, even if they haven't gotten an official word from the government at this point. Now, these 3 votes and meetings that are expected tonight are not the end of the process. There is then a 24-hour window in which there can be appeals that the Supreme Court filed against this. That too will take its time as that runs its course. But from the indications we're seeing here, the government, Netanyahu, feeling confident as this moves forward through the evening, and we will certainly keep you posted, Dana, as it moves into the subsequent meetings.
Okay, so that's the process, which is important. The politics there, obviously, are critically important. And now let's talk about the people who are being held. Do we know anything about the condition of these hostages? All of them, but even specifically the women and children on that list of 50 who are hopefully going to be released?
The answer is we simply don't. We know so little about the nearly 240 hostages held in Gaza, and that has been an incredible source of frustration. In fact, the little information we do know has only come out from the Israeli military when it says it has found the bodies of 2 Israeli hostages killed in Gaza and brought them out. There were several hostages released very early on, but that was weeks ago, if not more than a month ago. In terms of who is coming out, the 50 women and children, we know at this point almost nothing except that little bit. On the flip side of that, we also don't know anything about the 150 Palestinian women and children who are set to be released as part of this exchange. So in terms of the details of how this plays out, really the nitty-gritty of this, we are still waiting for that. And of course, the families of the hostages still waiting to find out if their loved ones are on that list.
Oren, thank you so much for that reporting. And this potential breakthrough in these hostage negotiations comes a day after the families of hostages met in Israel with the war cabinet there. Emotional calls to bring the hostages home. That's what happened in those meetings. Now, we heard similar emotion from one of the family members of a young girl that MJ was talking about, Abigail Adan. She's 3 years old. She's being held in Gaza. This is her great aunt speaking to CNN this morning.
These people have been in the dark for 45 days. Abigail is a beautiful child who wants to run around and play soccer with her older brother and sister. And she hasn't been able to run around in 45 days. I don't know where she is. We don't know. She should be home with her family and with her sister and brother. And she isn't right now. I'm not a politician. I'm not a diplomat. I will believe it when I see them walk out, be driven out, and they are freed.